Hey everybody, some gadget guy here checking in with the HTC One M8. I've been using HTC's flagship since mid-April, and after 4 months my experiences have been largely positive. I'm probably not going to blow anyone's minds here, but HTC has delivered a pretty terrific experience. Build quality is of course second to none in feeling like the premium price tag this phone commands. The rounded corners, the tapers, the gently rounded backplate. Almost no detail is overlooked. The edges around the micro USB are wonderfully finished. The antenna stripes can't be felt when running a finger over them. The only complaint I have is again with the headphone jack. Like the one found on the M7, it's not centered on the bottom casing, and the edge runs just over the tapered edge of the phone. Does this have any effect on the usage? Not in the slightest, but that's the nitpickiest complaint I can come up with. The design is that good. Seriously. It's one of the few Androids that I haven't automatically started looking for a case to customize it. I haven't particularly enjoyed the dot view case or the tiny smudgy dots it can deliver. I also have a nice spec bumper and the Fliptronics wallet case that we just recently reviewed, but the phone is just so damn pretty that I mostly use it naked. The layout is improved over the M7. The power button is located on the correct side of the top piece, but as this phone is taller than most other 5-inch screens, I do wish it were on the side of the phone under the volume rocker. The audio is of course the shining feature of this phone. The M8 speakers have a slightly harsher and more aggressive tone than the speakers found on the M7, but they are noticeably louder. Movies and gaming are helped tremendously by this speaker layout. We don't often talk about immersive experiences on small screens, but not having the audio muffled by your hands while watching or playing certainly helps. We of course have speaker reviews for you to listen to, but before we move into an era of USB-powered headphones, the M8 will likely stand as one of the last phones to have a fantastic headphone jack. It's one of the loudest you can find on any mobile, and Boom Sound software adds a punchy dimension to electronic and bass-heavy rock. I don't always enjoy the stereo widening tricks when used on jazz and classical, but for the most part, it helps more than it hurts music. Battery life has been a mixed bag, managing several email addresses and real-time updates to just about every social network under the sun. The low-power CPU state and power saver is often required for me to make it through the day and night. I can't quite eke out 2-day use unless I shut everything down to try and hypermile the phone. Thankfully, Power Saver doesn't completely wreck performance, and keeping it engaged usually helps me get similar, if not slightly better, daily battery life than that on the Galaxy S5 or Lumia Icon. It of course can't quite hang with the likes of larger batteried phones like the LG G2 or G3. If there is a weak link, it's the camera. Now don't get me wrong, the M8 has a good camera. Anyone who claims it isn't good probably doesn't understand how cameras work, or they're more impressed with spec sheets and megapixels rather than actual photo output. While the camera is good, it's competing against the very good cameras on the Galaxy S5 and LG G3, and the excellent cameras found on Nokia phones. Tweaking depth effects from the dual sensor is fun, but I just don't find myself using it as much as I'd hoped. Many will disagree with me, but when it comes to background blurring, I greatly prefer a shallow depth of field from the lens instead of software-produced blur. There's also an ergonomic issue with how close to the top edge that secondary camera sensor is. The edges of the phone taper so gracefully that the M8 can be a little tricky to hold onto. Bracing the top of the phone with the pads of my palm for a more stable grip will sometimes block that second sensor. Out of all of the manufacturer's software skins, I still prefer Sense for its sleeker and more minimal design. It feels clean, grown up, sophisticated. It's like high-performance cars. Sometimes people will be willing to pay more for less stuff packed inside. There are a couple of quirks I don't like. HTC only provides one contacts widget, a 4x4 monstrosity. And to make a single contact widget, you have to dig through a submenu for shortcuts to find the person shortcut. And of course, this menu is called Apps and Widgets, not Apps and Widgets and Shortcuts. I also don't particularly like the keyboard. The options for word prediction and spelling correction are limited to an almost all or none style experience. I find myself regularly correcting the auto correction after hitting the spacebar, even on short messages. I'm totally spoiled by the customization options on keyboards like SwiftKey, but even the stock Google keyboard doesn't feel quite as twitchy. And speaking of twitchy, I've made a lot of noise about the tap to wake feature on the M8. Many have commented on my previous videos that the One does not need to be oriented in portrait for tap to wake to function. To be fair, It's easy to see how I might have made that assumption, as that's exactly what HTC says about the feature. Regardless, the fact that you have to waggle the phone in some way before tap to wake will work sort of defeats the feature. Again, I'm admitting that I've been totally spoiled by how tap to wake works on Nokia and LG handsets, where you can easily activate the screen even if it's just lying static on a table. Now, I go back and forth between LG and HTC over the TV remote apps. Ultimately, HTC's ability to learn functions via pointing a remote at the IR blaster for custom functions takes a victory here. Between this app and a Chromecast, virtually everything I use my TV for can be controlled via my phone. And we've given up on game consoles for media streaming in our household now. We're a long way removed from the days where metal phones were a death knell for signal reception. I get speedy AT&T access now in my area, and happily the HTC can often outperform plastic-bodied phones, like some of the recent LGs I've reviewed. So where does that leave us? In general usage, the One is proving to be one of my favorite Androids to use. It's simple, clean, sophisticated, and garners positive responses from people when I show it off in public. Like a luxury car, that's exactly what I want out of a flagship phone. My main quibble is the camera. So the M8 is rarely the phone I'll pick up if I think I'm going to have a heavy photo or video taking day. And what's funny, after spending time crafting this revisit review, I'm now far more excited to see how the Windows Phone variant of the M8 will perform. Many of HTC's custom tweaks get Android users really close to the modern look and feel of Microsoft's Live tiles, and Blinkfeed just looks like it was made to be a Metro app. Sorry HTC, I just can't bring myself to call it the HTC One M8 for Windows though. That's maybe one of the dumbest phone names I've ever seen outside of the Samsung Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch LMNOP on Sprint. Let's all of us smartphone fans just agree now that the M8 is an Android and the W8 is a Windows phone. Deal? As always, folks, thanks so much for watching my videos, sharing my videos, subscribing to my channel, dropping me all of those amazing comments down below my reviews. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.